Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. As you know, the last few episodes we've been doing some of that zinc plating and yellow chromating, which is actually a lot of fun. Actually, it's not particularly hard to do. It takes a few bucks to get set up. I'm thinking around my setup, which ended up being the 3-gallon setup. Seemed like the most economical of the choices, because you have 1.5 gallon and 3 gallon. It's just a little bit more to go to the 3. Probably with the rectifier, all the tanks, all the extra buckets, once you get set up. Obviously I made a bench and everything, you don't need to do that, but I'm thinking around 400 bucks, something like that. You can set up, and the beauty of that is obviously you can, as you come across the parts that need doing, you can just do them. And I've been doing it in between my work, while I'm working in the shop, and you know, doing finishing or woodworking, whatever. In between things, I'm cleaning and chromating and zinc plating. It's actually a lot of fun. So I wanted to get back to the door welding video. The section I'm just about to show you, I thought I was going to completely finish the door in this video, but this next section took a little longer, and of course the video gets longer. I'm trying to cut the videos down so I'm not gassing too much. Here's the video. Hope you enjoy it, and I promise I'll finish it up in the next one, and we'll get that all done, all primed up and ready for final stripping and painting and all that. So that's obviously a long ways away. So anyway, here's what I've got so far. Okay, so we've got to work to get this guy in. That overlaps this last patch we did, and I've been working with a little piece of scrap to trying to get my technique down. So we need this little bead roll in here, and I was only able to create it on the bead roll. I was trying to do it with just bending, but it wasn't really successful. So first things first is to get that bead in there, and essentially that will coincide with this curve here, this one here, and then kind of dive down. I'm not yet familiar how I'm going to do that, or haven't figured that out yet. So anyway, you'll get to see what I'm doing. So let's get started with this. This was my dummy piece. I made the bead on here to give me an idea how far up from this edge, and I ended up having to trim it back anyway. So that bead is there. You can see I trimmed a little off of that, but I'm going to keep it at that because it gives us plenty of material to work with. So let's just use this as a guide. That's about the center of the bead there, you see. This is actually the underside, you see, and we don't put a lot of pressure on it first. We're going to do this back now. We just essentially rest it on there and touch it and give it one full turn. Okay, so I've set that, not very high pressure at the moment, so we'll get one pass going through, you see. Just a very gentle, keeping the center line on that roller. Some of these machines are electric powered with a foot pedal that makes it a lot smoother operation, but for this it's fine. So we'll loosen this one up and give it another 1 1.25 turn should do it. Actually back it off, maybe just 1 turn. I would imagine you could build this panel without putting this thing. You could probably just do a basic step. I don't think it would hurt anything. It's just a bead to help the water run off. This isn't a particularly expensive bead roller, but I mean, I'm not doing this professionally. If I was a professional doing it all the time, you get a much better one, but this will do for little jobs like this. Anyway, you can see it's getting a little bead in there. Quite nice. I think that'll do us. Okay, we have to make this bend here, this one here, you see. Alright, so let's see how we can do this. We'll try and get that riding on that bead edge there. Okay, I've been beating for a few minutes now. It's time to come into shape. Okay, another way to try and alleviate that bow that's being created, because this is essentially stretching that lip and making the whole thing bow. So I put it between two pieces of angle iron and clamped it in the vise and at the two ends, and then I can just gently, a bit more control, without keeping it straighter, you see. See, that's what we got now with that little curve, if you can see that. So now, see, we're going to have to make this second bend upwards to form the channel. Okay, off camera I got two strips of this flat bar. It's like 1/8 of an inch flat bar, welded it to a 1/4 inch flat bar, and then clamped it to this to build up what we've got. This adds up to just shy of 1/2 inch. It looks like about 7/16 to do the wrap, especially this one. Okay, with a lot of fussing around and messing around, I ended up moving it over to the bench again, clamping it down and holding it this way to get that creased edge, and then hitting it this way, you see. So it seems like that's working quite well. I chopped this out here so that can butt up against that one. That laps over, gets spot welded here, and then we are going to, let's see, I'm going to probably chop this down and go all the way along, but I'm not going to cut that yet. This little area here, I've cut that to length, but as you can see, it's got to just fold round slightly. So what I think I'll do, I will cut along here so I can cut this piece, fold it gently and see if we can get a mark on the job, you see. Cut this, I'm going to start bending this over. This I'm going to leave on at the moment. Let's see if we can't tap that round on the railroad tie. As you can see, what I'm trying to do is cut along and fold it, get it tight, then I can fold that down and then deal with this little end nub in here. Okay, I made that cut, you see. This should be bent a little bit further there, but we're getting very close here. See, I'm going to knock that corner down. You can see what I'm doing. I'm trying to work the corner here, getting it as tight a profile as possible. That little corner where it kind of blends into my curve, looking pretty good. Then see that once we got it right, then we can make our mark and fit the patch. You see the weld gap here? I've got one of these welding clamps to keep this weld gap consistent. I'm going to do a little finagling here because there's a bit of a gap down on this channel here. I can probably fill that up with weld. But what I'm going to do is put a couple of tacks here and here, probably here, and then I can start tacking along and cutting as I go with that slightly different technique. So let's see how that works out. This guy's welding up okay. I just put a bunch of spots along here. I did a little grinding. I'm filling in a sort of a larger hole here that I was a bit short on, but that's not a problem. It's a little tricky to fill up, but this is coming out real nice. Once I grind and sand that up, that'll come out real nice. I'll give you a close-up. What I'm doing, you see, you've got to be very careful with the MIG welds. Just take the heads off essentially with a grinder. Very carefully knock those heads down kind of quick so you don't generate too much heat, and then what I like to use is either a flat disc or this little angle grinder, this mini disc thing with a 36 grit, and just you got a lot of control, you see, and not put too much heat in, so and then smooth it out and then go up the grits and all that business. So, take those magnets out, you see. So I'm using the smaller discs because the discs are that much thinner. And I've seen some people cut right the way through their 2 patches. That's a good way of doing it as well. But I'm going to just try using this as a line and cut like that. See how we get on. I'm off kilter a little bit there, but it doesn't matter because we got plenty to weld to. So I can peel that one back. See? It'll follow wherever, but it's got plenty of meat back there. But I want to try and come back up. That's me. I have trouble seeing actually. So let's try and come further up. Again, it doesn't really matter because it's following the same trajectory as the cut. I got very distracted in the weldings and I forgot to turn the camera back on again. But anyway, so let me go through. As I last said, I welded up this. These extra spots are me going back and picking up any pinholes I may have. I'll show you what I do with a strong flashlight behind, just to pick up any pinholes that are bound to have been there, to just pick those up and then gently grind those down. So there's another one there. Anyway, so the way I went about it was that I spot welded it here and left the patch overlapping the main door here. And first of all, I started to use a grinder to cut through both of them, but the grinding wheel is just a little bit too thick, and it left in this section before I knew what was happening. It was too thick of a gap. I was able to weld it up very carefully, but it's way too thick of a thing to do an overlap cut like that. That's what I find anyway. I've seen guys do it, but I think it leaves too much of a gap. So from that point on, I used a reciprocating saw, cutting through both of them. Now, this is not a particularly great one. It tends to stall out on me a bit. I've actually got on order a much better one for later on in the bodywork, because these are incredibly handy tools to get into little tight spaces. But I don't know whether I oiled it and everything. I don't know what's going on with it. It just doesn't seem to have the oomph. But I was able to cut all the way through. It wandered a little bit, but that didn't really matter because this was cutting through this and the main material, the door material. And so when you remove the waste, it matches exact anyway. So even if it does wander a bit, it doesn't really matter. And this nice thin blade here, you see, provides almost like the perfect welding gap, because you want a little gap for your weld to go penetrate all the way through. So once I get this new one ordered, which has got more power apparently and much better tool, this kind of got me by for the moment. But anyway, so cut that, remove the waste at the back, spot welded at the end here, okay, folded that round, spot welded all along. That's pretty time consuming, spreading my heat out here and there, spread it so I don't get any warpage. As you can see, this curve here, I'm trying to represent that curve, and it goes into our bead quite well along here, all the way here. I fell short just a smidge here, but really it doesn't matter because it's overlapping this. I filled in a few spots there, spot welded in 3 places on here. I've still got to refine everything, so you can see it's all a bit scratched up and everything, but I'll refine that down. So I actually turned the power down a little bit on these little fill-in bits, so I don't get a big glob of weld to have to grind again, because main thing is not grinding up your main material too thin. This is 18 gauge, so we've got a little bit of room. I mean, some people are working with 20 gauge or even 22 gauge from my understanding, but this is 18 gauge, but you can still, you know, cut it too thin or grind it too thin. You can see there's a hole there. That I'll try and fill that up with weld. I can just carefully fill that up weld and grind it as best I can. It's kind of hidden under the rubber trim anyway, so that's not too big of an issue. Now, obviously, once this is all done and smoothed out, all nice, next thing is to do is to get that final skin on. So you can see that's going to be a lovely gap there for my drain hole slot. The next patch will be this wide from here to here, covering all of this up. This I am not even going to bolt. I might put a little spot weld on here, but this all gets covered up, as you can see, with this. So you don't see all those lap joints and all that stuff. And then I'll come in after and cut these slots. You can see just there, you can see the inner skin that we've just done just there. So this drain hole is very close to the edge. So I'll probably drill a couple of holes and maybe a Dremel or something like that to finalize that slot there. What else? Yeah, that was kind of it took a little time to fabricate this. Main thing is take your time, use a bit of common, and you'll be good to go. This kind of dived off here. It's not perfect, but this is just this little bead here. From my understanding, if you can imagine water hitting that, it encourages it to roll around and come off this back edge here and get out of the way, you see. So I cleaned all the backside off of all that gunky grease stuff, and I'm going to shoot a rust encapsulator all in the back here. I'll probably do that, well, I'll do that once we're all welded up, and I will grind this up to probably around 220, something like that, get it ready, and I'll just put a bit of primer on there just to seal off the metal. Right, just give me an idea of my technique here, you see, to grind these two tacks off here. So you don't want to be going crosswise like this, because what ends up happening, the grinder rolls up to it, right, and then dives off the other side, and then has a tendency to grind in both sides, and so you end up riding the tack, you see, and then you end up with this domed and then cut either side. So you just want to, what I've been doing is using the guard here as a kind of a guide, and then let me try and get it for you. Oops. What I'm going to do is grind off and just kind of gently pare off the top of that weld there. It's very small. You might want some of these powerful glasses so you can get really in there and see it. So let me show you. It might get a bit noisy because of this and also the compressor. So here we go. So ready? Taking the top off till it gets right close to the body. See? Like that. Take those off. This is part of the tricky part of the whole job, making sure that you grind off very carefully and finish it nicely, you know. You have an awful lot of control, because this is like a pivot point, you see, and then it's resting somewhere, and then you can just very gently kiss into there and do a really refined, it's called, in woodwork, I use a similar technique with a chisel. You always have somewhere to point or to rest on, and then you can just gently pare, and you have an enormous amount of control right down to, you're watching right where that hits on the weld. You see little sparks coming off, so you know where the point of contact is. So then, with those ground down nicely, I can go straight to this angle grinder here, right? Get this on. That's 60. See, there's a little line there where maybe I'm a little out of level. That's what ends up happening, you see. You'll have a low spot. You don't really want to kind of avoid the temptation of grinding down to that, because otherwise you're going to be making thin metal either side. So you know, that's gone out a little out of level there, but because this is under the door, also we could skim it with a little contour filler and epoxy primer, and it'll be good to go. Right, as you can see, I ground it up and I put a couple of conditioning discs on and give it a quick going over. It's a little lumpy there, but I think that will be fine for the underside of the door. If this was, say, a door skin or something like that, I would have taken, you know, it's good that we actually had this as a practice piece, because I'd have taken much more care to make sure we're absolutely perfectly level, and getting the proper body saw to make that lovely join is crucial, because it improved somewhat here, you see, quite substantially. Here, this lumpy bit here is because I had to fill in quite a heavy gap. Not too bothered, like I say. I can skim that and blend it with contouring, and that will disappear. So overall, for the first attempt on something like this, I think that's come out pretty good. So I'm going to chuck some primer on that, and the next job is to wrap this around, spot weld it to this edge, if we can get a little spot weld on there, otherwise a little bead weld or something, and we'll be good to go. So let me get that sealed up. Hope you enjoyed that video. Again, sorry it's taken a little time. This is all new to me, this welding and bodywork stuff, so I'm you know, having to break it down into a lot more parts, you know, rather than blasting through it, and I figure you want as much detail as possible. So anyway, thanks a lot for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video. All right, take care.